Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, episode 127. Today's podcast is entitled How to Be Assertive 2.0. Why 2.0? One of the most popular episodes of this podcast is number 28 on assertiveness. So the Communication Diva has decided to update and expand on the topic. Not in a pushy, aggressive way, not in a defensive way either. Just a nice, friendly, middle-of-the-road, hey, you, yes, you, don't turn this off. Get your finger off that button. I see you're about to turn this off because you think you've already heard it. Well, you haven't. This is new material. Give her a break. Man, you guys.
Hey, this is Jen Swanson, and welcome to episode 127 of the Communication Diva podcast, where I help you to get the job, to love your work, and to advance your career through deeper and more effective communication. It is finally summer. So great. It's not technically summer, but it feels like summer outside, and my garden is in, and I've been posting some pictures on Instagram. So if you would like to follow me there, look up Communication Diva, all one word, on Instagram, and follow me, and you'll be able to see some of the color and the loveliness of the rhododendrons that are in full bloom right now. They're hot pink and they're gorgeous. The poppies that I've got going on, and some of the other photos that I've posted there of the fledgling vegetable garden, which I spent all day Saturday planting. So if you're interested in gardening at all, take a look at that. It's so good to be outside after the rain. We had weeks and weeks and weeks of it. Good for the soul to be away from a screen and digging in the dirt a little bit too. I think being unplugged is a very important thing to do every once in a while, and I might even do an episode on it. Who knows? But today, the topic of assertive skills training and how to be more assertive is one that has been coming up a lot in the line of work I do. So I thought I would like to revisit this again, because the last episode I did was back in 2012, episode 28, and it was very, very popular. Now, I had a technical glitch quite some time ago, and a whole bunch of my website content disappeared, which I was not very happy about, but I have, the episode is still available through iTunes, through Stitcher Radio, through iHeartRadio, and I'm going to put a direct link to it in the show notes of this episode over at communicationdiva.com. So if you look up episode 127 at communicationdiva.com, either under the blog or the podcast tab, you'll be able to find it, and I'll put a direct link to that episode. Now, that episode from 5 years ago is still really relevant and solid information, and so if you haven't had a chance to take a listen to that, it's only about 20 minutes long, and I invite you to do that. But I was thinking about assertiveness, particularly in the workplace for this episode, and also it's also relevant in the job search area, that time around getting into the workplace, looking for a job, when you're going through all the interviews and communicating with recruiters and possible employers, and how much assertiveness could make a difference to whether or not you actually get a job. So today I want to do three things. I want to remind you what assertiveness is. I want to talk about the benefits of being assertive, especially in the workplace and around your career. And then I want to give you some skills to practice, steps that you can put into action today to help you get to that place where you feel more assertive. So that's what I've got for you today. Let's just jump right in. So what is assertive behavior? Well, an assertive person is able to express herself, share thoughts and feelings and needs and opinions with clarity. An assertive person stands up for himself and uses his own authentic voice. An assertive person respects others, and here's the key. An assertive person respects others while still respecting themselves. And that is the respect is really the key difference between the assertive and the aggressive and the passive behavioral styles. Being assertive is the optimal way to behave, but honestly, it's not possible all the time. Often we change our behavioral style depending on our context. So you might notice that you are more assertive at home than you are in the workplace. Or perhaps it's the other way around. Perhaps you're more comfortable speaking your mind at work and you become more passive at home. Whatever the case, we all have a default, and figuring out what you default to most often, whether it's passive behavior, aggressive behavior, or assertive behavior, is really a useful thing to know about yourself, because until you diagnose something, you can't treat it if it needs to be treated. And it's easier to learn how to improve your assertive skills if first you know where your starting place is. If first you know what you most often revert to. So pay attention to what behavioral style you might be defaulting to most of the time. Let's look at one of the characteristics, what the characteristics are of an assertive person. So, and again, this is what you're aiming for. If you're not there yet, you might be partway there. You might be very passive, very shy. You might be very aggressive and need to bring it down to an assertive state. So let's look at some of the characteristics of what an assertive person is, what the characteristics look like. I don't know why I can't talk today. And let's start there. So when speaking, an assertive person has few hesitations. An assertive person speaks clearly and calmly and is willing to explore options and ideas, is collaborative and open to looking for the opinions of others. So asking other people for their opinions and not necessarily agreeing with them, but at least being willing to listen to them. An assertive person has clear body language, makes direct eye contact, is generally relaxed and listens to what is being said. There is a certain self-confidence and a level of self-esteem that comes from being assertive. And so a truly assertive person will possess those qualities, and these qualities will be evident most of the time. So you can see why, if you are a passive or an aggressive personality, that becoming assertive and practicing assertiveness could be to your benefit, and that it really is an advantage in the workplace. So why is it so? What are some of the benefits and advantages of being assertive, or of developing your assertiveness skills so that you default more consistently to this style of behavior? Well, I'm going to give you five advantages, 5 benefits as to why you might want to work on this skill. So the first one, as I just said a moment ago, is that being assertive can increase your self-esteem and your self-confidence. And there are a lot of us that could use that, I think. So you can become more self-confident. You can have a greater self-esteem, if, a healthy self-esteem, if you become more assertive. Number 2, being assertive can reduce conflict and miscommunication and errors in the workplace, because an assertive person will communicate more clearly and effectively in the workplace. This will naturally reduce conflict and friction. If you actually say what you think, instead of, as a passive person might not, a passive and a passive-aggressive person won't, would be to not actually say how you feel about something. An aggressive person will say how they feel, but a passive person might just agree with something and then be upset about it later. So being assertive can reduce that and can allow actual, this is actually how I think and what I feel about this situation to come forward. So it can reduce conflict and miscommunication by being a more clear and more effective form of communicating. Assertive people, this is number 3, are less angry because they ask for what they need and for what they want. And while they don't always get what they need and what they want, of course, they don't spend a lot of time beating themselves up or beating others up because they didn't try. Have you ever been in a situation where you wish you had said something and you didn't. Or you really wanted to say no, but you said yes just because you figured everybody would want you to say yes. That's a passive response. And most of the time, passive people are unhappy people. And I can say that because I used to be a passive person where I would let other people make decisions and be really unhappy about it. But then, beat myself up because I didn't stand up for myself or say what I really thought or what I really felt. So I'm coming from a place of experience and of knowing what it's very much like to be a passive person. So assertive people are less angry. Passive people might seem pleasant and sweet and will do anything you ask, but there's often an underlying anger there. Number 4, assertive people earn respect because they give respect to others. I will respect someone far more who sets clear boundaries and who says no when they can't do something and says yes when they can and are willing. In a recent episode, I talked about the passive-aggressive person who will say yes, but then will not do what was asked or will deliberately sabotage the project because, in fact, had they been honest, they would have been better off saying no. An assertive person won't do that. An assertive person will speak their mind, whereas a passive person won't. And as I just said, will be quietly angry about it later. An aggressive person might speak their mind while, bowling over the feeling and opinions of others. And a passive-aggressive person is just not going to share their opinions openly and will appear to be on side, but later are going to grumble about everything. Or they're going to do what they can so that what they've said yes to doesn't actually work out for anyone. So assertive people avoid all that. They avoid the anger and the angst, or at least a lot of it, by speaking their minds in a respectful way and doing what they say they will do and saying no when they need to. And, this doesn't mean that you're going to agree with everything as an assertive person, but you are going to feel able to say, I agree to disagree. Or I don't think that's a good idea, but I'll go along with it because we want to move forward with this project. But I just want to register my discontent with this procedure or something. So an assertive person feels comfortable speaking their mind, but they do it with respect for themselves and respect for the rest of the team. Number 5, assertive behavior can be the difference between getting a job and not getting one, especially in that interview phase. An assertive person can say why they feel they are fit for a job, whereas a passive person might be too afraid to speak up. Passive and shy are not synonymous, but they go together sometimes. But a person who is passive might just wait to be invited to take the job. But a person who is assertive might feel more comfortable talking about why they think they would be a good fit. An assertive person will follow up and won't wait long past the time when the hiring decision has been made. An assertive person will make that follow-up phone call or send that follow-up email to thank the person for their time and find out when a decision, how things are going, when a decision might be made. An assertive person will ask great questions at the end of an interview and will not be afraid to clarify anything that they have questions about. So there are lots of reasons why during a job search, assertiveness can be one of the main key skills that you bring to the table. And not just that you bring to that particular job, but you bring to the whole process of looking for a job. Assertiveness is a skill. It can be learned. And if you're feeling a little bit worried right now that this might be too scary or too hard, don't be, because step by step you can increase your assertiveness, and you can actually do it starting right now. As soon as you turn this off, you can start it today, and no one needs to know what it is you're doing. You can practice this skill on people around you and see what specific things you need to work on to get better at this skill. So the good news is that there are endless opportunities to practice. It just takes awareness, and it takes some effort on your part, just like anything new, like learning any new skill, like learning how to play the saxophone or, learning coding or something. it takes an awareness of what you know and what you don't know and where you're at, and then some of the steps that you can implement to get better at what it is you want to get better at. So I'm going to give you some actionable steps. I'm going to give you 7 things that you can do to practice becoming more assertive. And you can do all of these, or you can pick one of them and work on it. You can pick 1 or 2 of them and work on it. Maybe you're really good at one of them already and you don't need to practice it. But my experience with communication skills is that it is a practice. It's an ongoing practice, and it doesn't matter how many years you're involved in it, how many degrees you have in it. You can mess up at any moment. So it's a continual practice that needs working on. So no matter where you're at, you probably could improve in some area of this skill. So the first thing you need to do is decide that you want to do it. Decide that you want to get more assertive. And yes, it's a choice. You can sit around and wait for yourself to get more assertive, but guess what? That is not going to happen. So you need to choose to not just default to your usual behavioral style, and to take the risk as often as you can to practice being assertive. And I use the word risk intentionally. It can feel risky to step out of your little comfort zone where your neurology, your neuro pathways are used to doing things a certain way. But it takes a little bit of a risk, and it takes a decision to step out of that and to try something new. So decide today, decide right now that you will do something each day toward becoming more assertive, and start with your very, very next interaction with somebody. So that's the first thing, is the decision. Number 2 is to use your I language. And I know I've written a blog post on this, and I believe I've done a podcast episode on I language. You could look it up. But it's a good idea to take the word you out of your vocabulary and to speak for yourself. So for example, instead of saying, well, I can't decide until you tell me what it is you want me to do, which is okay, but it sounds a little aggressive, you might say something like, I would feel better about taking on this project if I had an idea of what the deadline was and what the expected outcomes are. So that's a pretty assertive way of speaking, by setting out some expectations and by letting the person know that before you say yes to something, you need more information. Because you need it to feel comfortable. You need to feel comfortable taking on the project. And I language means that you are speaking for yourself and for yourself only. And if there's one thing I've said 1,000 times, it feels like in this podcast series, is that you can't change anyone else. You can only change yourself. So your I language, you can use it to stand up for yourself and to speak clearly. You can use it to offer your opinions and to share how you feel about a situation or a project or something in the workplace that's going on. An assertive person is not afraid to talk about their feelings either. So to talk openly and honestly and, of course, appropriately about their feelings. So using something like, I would like it if, instead of you should or you need to, for example. It's a small change, but it is a significant change. So think about your I language and practice using it. Learn more about it. Read the blog post that I wrote on I language, or find the podcast. I can't remember what episode it is right now. But learn I language. If you already know it, remember to use it and to speak just for yourself and your own experience. And that is an assertive skill, a part of the assertiveness skill set. So number 3 is to listen well. Be open to the opinions and ideas of others and really listen to what they have to say before offering your opinions and your ideas. An assertive person doesn't have to agree with everything anyone else thinks, but an assertive person is respectful that other people have their own opinions, and an assertive person offers that respect by listening and by considering other people's points of view. So you can practice listening really actively during your next conversation, and you can see what you learn about that, about the other person and about yourself. That's one thing you can do as soon as this podcast is over and you have a conversation with someone, is to listen actively and to listen carefully and see what you can learn about yourself and about the other person while you're doing that. The fourth thing you can do is to think collaboratively. So instead of letting all the decisions be made by other people, which is a passive move, and instead of deciding everything for everyone else, which is an aggressive move, then think teamwork. Think that old cliche, team player, and ask for and offer opinions and see what you can come up with as a collaboration, what you can come up with together. So that's number 4. Think collaboratively. Think team. Number 5 is to practice saying no when you actually don't want to do something. If you're able to say no, if it's something that you actually have a choice in, you're able to say no, try it. Instead of saying yes because you want to be liked or you want to be seen to be helpful. So in other words, practice being honest about your feelings and speaking to that. If you don't actually want to babysit for your sister this weekend, or you don't actually want to drive somebody to the bus station, or whatever the case is, practice saying no and see how that feels. Try it on. Test it out. And then conversely, practice saying yes when previously you might have been too afraid to do that. Risk a little bit and see what happens. Maybe you've been too afraid to say yes to something. Try it and see what happens. We need to stretch a little and to overcome the fear that we have, because sometimes we're just in our own way. So when you can stretch a little and overcome the fears that are stopping us from doing things, we grow, right? We grow a little bit. The 6th one is to be decisive. Passive people often can't make decisions, even little ones. And I said this in the last version of this episode, that one of the ways you can improve your assertiveness is by not worrying about what everyone else will say or think or do, and by deciding for yourself what it is that you want. And I think the example I gave in the other episode was at a restaurant, or when you're talking with the people in your family about what to have for dinner. Passive people often will not offer an opinion. Oh, it doesn't matter to me, whatever you like. Or they have a tough time making decisions with a restaurant menu and wondering what everyone else is going to order before they order something. That's a passive move. And so don't worry about what everyone else is doing or will think or will say or will do. Be decisive. Practice being decisive. Now, to a passive person, this might sound terrifying. So take baby steps. Decide something based on what you want or think or feel honestly. I've told this story before, but it makes a great illustration, and maybe you haven't heard it, so I'll tell it again. Although this was with a very small and relatively inconsequential instance, so it wasn't anything earth-shattering, but it makes a great example of what I'm trying to say here. So a few years ago, I was in an Irish pub with a couple of friends who had not previously met each other before. One was visiting from overseas, and one has been a friend for years and years and years. And the one friend that's from here is on the aggressive personality side. So she tells it like it is, or at least how she sees it. And she can be really bossy, and she uses words all the time like should, and you can't do that, and you have to do that, and you should do that. And she's a lot of fun, and I love her dearly. And she can tell everyone around what they should be doing and thinking and feeling, etc. And my other friend is passive, more shy, and lets others make decisions for her. So having never met, my one friend decided that the other one should try a particular type of drink because she thought it was the best drink ever and everyone should try it at the pub. And so she announced that, this is the aggressive one, you can guess, she announced that was what the other person, the passive person, was going to drink, and placed the order for her with the server. And so, it was a bit surprising because they'd never met before, and all of a sudden one's telling the other one what she's going to drink and tells the server that's what she wants. Now, we were having a fun time, which is why I said this was not a great, big, huge, pivotal decision, or, it's not a work project or anything. We were having a little bit of fun, and my passive friend said okay, and she actually ended up liking the drink that was ordered for her, which is a good thing. But it was an interesting example of an aggressive person not respecting the right of the other person to make her own decisions. And it was an example of the passive person going along with the decision that was made on her behalf without her consultation. So an assertive person in the middle would make her own decision based on suggestions and ideas from others as well as her own preferences, but in the end would be the one ordering from the server, right? You would take responsibility for doing that for yourself if you were assertive. So practice making your own decisions this week and see what happens, and practice making your decisions quickly. And as I said in the last time I did this episode, was start small. Start at a restaurant. Look at the menu and make your own choice, and don't worry about what anyone else is going to order. The last step that you can practice, and I mean there's lots more, and there was some mentioned last time that I didn't mention this time, but number 7 is to keep calm and keep your emotions in check. Because emotions can hijack communication very handily, and then it's hard to think or behave in ways that are helpful, especially in the workplace. So if you feel yourself getting angry, maybe back away and assess the situation and dig a little into yourself as to why you're feeling this way. You don't have to judge yourself about it, but just use curiosity. Why am I triggered by what just happened? Perhaps you're feeling afraid, or you're feeling inadequate, or there's some other emotion that you're feeling. Take a breather. Give yourself some time, and give yourself that time to reflect, because you might just learn something about yourself by doing that. So keep calm and keep your emotions in check. And so if you're in a conversation or a situation this week and you feel your emotions coming up, you might want to just take a moment to think about that. You might want to journal about it. You might want to write it down somewhere. Start a journal about your emotions and see what happens in your communication, because that's a really good way to learn more about yourself. And the only way you can gain skills and improve and grow is to really know where your beginning is, where your starting point is. So becoming good at being assertive can reduce stress. It can make for a more harmonious work life and home life too. And becoming assertive can actually be quite transformative in your career and in your non-working life. So as with everything, as I say all the time, it takes practice. Start small, be patient with yourself, and just keep practicing. Choose one of these 7 skill building tips and do that skill building tip today. Build on your skill as you go. Add another one tomorrow if you want, or do one a week until you feel confident and comfortable. You can do this. Yes, you can. I hope this was helpful. I'm going, as I said before, going to link to the original podcast on assertiveness in the show notes over at communicationdiva.com, so you can listen to that one too if you missed it. Please do join me on Instagram. If you're on Instagram, you can find me at Communication Diva. If you're on Twitter, you can find me at Jen Swanson and then the number 2. So JENN Swanson and then the number 2. Or you can drop me an email, or you can send me a voicemail with SpeakPipe. I look forward to connecting with you soon and to finding out what other things you would like me to talk about on this podcast. I appreciate feedback and information and topic suggestions from listeners, because I'm here to serve you. So if you'd take a moment to do that, I would appreciate that. And also share this episode if you think somebody out there would like to learn a little bit more about being more assertive. Until next time, this is Jen Swanson. Take very good care, my friends.